Elliott Randal shares more stories on his Steely Dan sessions. I'm John Beaudin. This is Rock History Music. Remember, if you want to support the channel, there are links in the description. You can either buy a t-shirt, make a donation on PayPal, or join our Patreon. Here's Elliott Randal. You helped Donald Fagen and Walter Becker. You helped them on a demo in the early days, long before. Was that a band yet, or?
Good question. It was a band in the making. Basically, Donald and Walter and I were all part of a backing band for Jay and the Americans. And both Marty and Kenny from the Americans discovered that Donald and Walter had these other fine qualities other than just playing bass and keyboards. So Kenny took them into the studio and started making demos. And then they asked me if I would come and play on a bunch of the demos, which I did. It was great. It was, it was really watching the embryonic form of Steely Dan. And it wasn't until a year later, maybe, that the tapes found their way out to LA. And Jay Lasker, who was the president of ABC Dunhill, signed them as writers. And it wasn't until 6 months, 7 months went by where they were doing these little sessions, when they weren't supposed to be late at night in the studio. And Jay said, "Oh, I think these guys have something here." So Steely Dan was basically born.
What was your first impression of both guys when you first met them?
I really liked them. They were, you could say they were strange, and I don't mean that in any sort of bad way. They were just non-conventional guys whose focus was on art, literature, music. And they did an incredible job. Certainly, in the early days, through that whole succession of albums, of really pushing the boundaries. Reeling in the Years, Do It Again were almost pop compared to where they went.
Yeah.
But it was always interesting. Always interesting.
I asked Jeff I says, well, Do It Again, Round and Round, Bodhisattva. I says, I used to be a big Buddhist myself, not as much anymore, but did you know, Don, I don't even know which one it was, that they were into Buddhism back then?
I didn't know that.
See, he didn't either. He and I haven't published that yet. I don't think I put that part up yet. And I'm going, came out in the lyrics, or sometimes how it is. If you're pregnant, you notice pregnant women. If you're hyper focused on the number 9, you're going to see it everywhere, right? You never really know. Was he a reluctant lead singer back then? I always got the vibe that.
God, yes, absolutely. He hated the sound of his own voice, which is why they asked David Palmer to come and sing.
Yeah.
At a certain point, though, through about half of the first record, Donald decided that he wasn't happy with how David was portraying the way the song should go in his mind. And so he reluctantly took the reins as the vocalist. And of course, he's a wonderful vocalist. He's very, very expressive.
Yeah. And that's such different singers, too. That's the other thing. I mean, there's bands all over the place that have two singers that sound very different, and it works. But in Can't Buy a Thrill, I remember going, Mr. Palmer's vocals I love, but there was just something about Donald. I mean, you like what you like, right? You can't help that. That's the thing. So when you came back to Steely Dan, was it Reeling, or was it the two albums together that you just happened to be in LA to perform? It was because you were on Katie Lied and
the one right after, the Royal Scam.
The Royal Scam, right?
Yeah. So long story short on that is, after turning down an offer to join the band on the first album.
So they asked you to join the band, and was it immediate? You knew you didn't want to? I mean,
I took certain things into consideration. One of them was knowing all of the characters, and the other was knowing that if I was going to join the band, one of the guitarists would be unjoining the band.
Right.
So out of loyalty, And out of seeing the scene for, what it might have become, which it did, I thought to myself, literally, these guys are not going to last as a band with the personnel longer than 3 albums. So on the first album, I did Real, and I also did this really strange, very strange solo called Kings. And I didn't play on the second or third because they were the band themselves. And the fourth album, Donnie and Walter decided to try a bunch of different players. So I was invited back and got to play Throw Back the Little Ones. That's right. Which was fun. It was, for you musicians out there, it was quite the challenge because it was basically, Elliott, roam free, but you see these notes here, you got to play these. And what it was doubling the horn parts that they had already put down. So it was going improvise, read, improvise. So it was quite a challenge. But I loved it, and I loved the way it came out.
Do you remember who played drums on that? I don't remember. It doesn't say on Wiki. I looked it up and I couldn't find it.
That's a good question, and I don't have an answer for that.
That's okay.
I was always brought in after the fact. I was one of the people who would, sort of finish up the painting, as it were. The third album that I did with them, which was
Royal Scam.
Royal Scam, was so much fun. Now,
so what was the difference between those two? What made that so much funner?
Yeah. The first of the two we did in LA. The second of the two we did in New York. Different personnel, different vibe altogether. I mean, the vibe between the two albums is night and day. And what happened was Purdy and Rainey were both playing on the rhythm tracks, or at least on the rhythm tracks that I played. And Paul Griffin was playing keyboards. Now, Donald and Walter knew the dirt about how these 3 other guys sometimes got along, but sometimes could bite each other's heads off. And they wanted an album that actually had a large degree of angst and to it. So they pushed every button on those 3 guys, and they could have killed each other by the time those sessions were over. But the music hung together like anybody's business.
So who were the 3 guys?
It was Bernard Purdy,
right,
the drummer,
of course,
Chuck Rainey on bass, and Paul Griffin on keyboards.
Amazing. I mean, I've heard of stuff like that. To sort of, there's a, music there's a feeling. I used to think that when I had more fervor for what I did on the radio, it came across. I mean, I was a really new age guy for a lot of years, but I remember thinking things have feelings to them, and it doesn't hurt if you've got it. And hopefully it's the old thing where the album track sounds good, but the live version, oh my God. So I get that, but it was just overall a fun experience for you.
I'm sorry, it was
overall a fun experience for you. The Royal Scam.
I loved every minute of it.
Tell me about.
And I still love every minute that I spend with the Steely Dan organization, if you will. I've done a couple of shows with them in London.
Yeah, and
it was a dream come true. Basically, I didn't have to go back to a hotel room. Just getting up on stage, playing with my friends, and going home.
That's different, yeah. So what did you play when you obviously you play Reeling in the Years, but when you come up on stage, do you play anything else?
I wound up doing whatever the encore was after Reeling actually was an encore at that point. And then there was an encore, which I don't remember.
We'll have more from Elliott Randal in a couple of days. Remember, he was a session guitarist for Steely Dan, Frankie Valli, Paul Anka, 2 of the Kiss members' solo albums, Gene Simmons, Peter Criss. He worked with the Village People, Richie Havens, Peter Frampton, Yoko Ono, Carly Simon, Carl Wilson, Laura Nero, Kirsty McCall, and many others. Remember, if you want to support the channel, all the links are in the description. You can make a donation at PayPal, join our Patreon, or buy a t-shirt. I'm John Beaudin. This is Rock History Music.